The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Tuesdays here. Great to be with you on Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And find us in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. And as always, can check us out, Hail Varsity Radio Network, 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in, 800-825-5865. Starting five shout-outs going on. We put to bed a magical college football season, a wow playoff rendition last night. Looked ugly for a bit, and then Notre Dame kept on swinging, turned into a really good ball game, and Ohio State prevails as they win the national championship, get it done. What a resume they've put together with their postseason run. Michigan who? Well, I don't know that Ohio State fans have forgiven, but at least there's a little bit of redemption for the Buckeyes, and their only way for redemption was to win a championship. It's truly championship or bust for that program, that head coach, unfortunately, but they got it done. We'll talk about what you need in Lincoln and just college football to compete and get some of your thoughts. Mitch Sherman coming up here in 15 minutes. We'll check in hour two. Michael Bruntz will be with us. And then the Pride of Ord says hello. Andy Markowski going to join us. And you're welcome to talk some pigskin and hoops with us as well. Elijah, what'd you think? I know you got out of here after kickoff. I got home and about through the remote, through the TV, just because the batteries were not working, and I had to, I was going to use a machete to pry open the remote. I was not in the mood, and thankfully, the lovely wife, the bunny's like, no, I'll open this up for you, and away we went. So, yeah, I got to watch some college football, made a little chicken, and kind of sat through it. And said, all right, this is getting into blowout city. And that blowout turned into a tight ball game. And then, voila, Ohio State responded. It's 3rd and 11. There's 2 minutes left. What does Chip Kelly do? Let's throw it to the best dude on the field, Jeremiah Smith, on 3rd and 11 to make a play. 56 yards later, it's field goal time. And a little bit of breathing room because you saw a lot of pucker factor going on with the Ohio State faithful.
Well, think about the pucker factor. If Notre Dame would have knocked home that field goal. I know there was a lot of debate about whether or not the field goal was the right decision. But think about if you're up by 6. Think about because it would have been a 13-point game in that case. You probably don't go for 2 after your touchdown, so I'm going to assume it's now a 6-point game. Does that increase the pucker factor compared to an 8-point game? Because with an 8-point game, I think
you still got to get the 2.
I think Ryan Day can have the confidence saying, we trust our defense. Even if they get a touchdown, they still got to go get 2. We've already seen their best 2-point play. Kind of gives you the confidence to be able to go deep on 3rd down to Jeremiah Smith. You wonder if
they got conservative for a while, and then they did. Well, the whole world knew who was getting the football, and that was Jeremiah Smith. And a great throw by Will Howard. To be honest, I don't mind Freeman saying it's 4th and 9. We have momentum. Let's keep the momentum. Let's kick the field goal. That was his answer in the post game. You just got to hit the field goal. Same dude who drilled it for you. To advance you against Penn State. Had one go off the upright and then ringing in your ears. But everybody has a buddy or knows somebody that's a Notre Dame fan, and hey, they played their butt off. Kudos to them because that thing was 31-7, and you're like, oh my God, is this TCU Georgia again? Because it was a mismatch. Not that Notre Dame didn't have some good ball players, but Ohio State had a lot of good ball players, and that's where we kind of shifted back to Nebraska, man. You need some dudes, and we'll wait and see some of the dudes Nebraska has acquired.
Yeah, that's kind of the one letdown from last night is you expand to a 12-team playoff. You get all these teams in. It's in a wide-open field. And, the most expensive roster in college football with the most 5 stars in college football takes home the national championship.
Well, and I got a little clarity on that from Joel Klatt. Klatt's show is must listen to. But Klatt was like, look, the perception of Ohio State is that they're just the best team money could buy since SMU. The money spent, that $20 million payroll, was spent like Michigan. It was the Stay One More Year fund. So it was retention is where most of that $20 million went versus on addition. Now, you got Will Howard, the ultimate point guard with 4 and 5 stars.
And that probably took a little money.
Probably, yes. It wasn't free. It wasn't cheap.
I guarantee they were throwing a bag at Quinshon Judkins to go be your backup rotational running back.
I'm not done. Yes. I mean, think of the people they added, though. I mean,
Caleb Downs probably the most expensive safety in football.
Those are 3 sound investments.
Well, how much money did you go put into Jeremiah Smith? Probably a lot. I know you can sell the fact that, hey, as of right now, Ohio State's wide receiver but you still had to go throw some money at him to go get him. I can guarantee you that.
Brian Hartline needs to be plucked away to a coordinator or head job by somebody.
The rest of college football can hope.
Well, he's great.
Oh, yeah.
He is incredible. And he followed a real scumbag, but was also great at recruiting and developing talent. That's the thing. When we talk about the talent factor, it wins. And it wins out. But it's still got to be molded and coached, developed, and held accountable. So you need to win with the Jimmies and the Joes because it was or else for Ohio State and Ryan Day. It goes from, dude, what a great resume, what a great championship run, what playmaking under pressure that your freshman future first pick overall made. And then the other side of it is you are too big to fail. Whether it was stay one more year or some key pieces from the portal, you still dropped $20 million. So if you don't win it, how god-awful of a coach are you to not only not win the title with this team, but also you lost to your rival Michigan. I mean, the pressure was no fun. It was a have to do it last night for Ryan Day, it felt like. And you could see it on his face after they finally got the win.
And if you go back 12 months, the storyline falls a little bit, or it's a little swept under the rug now because of how it's worked out, but the decision to go get Will Howard wasn't widely applauded. It was like, did you really upgrade that much on Kyle McCord?
Nice depth piece.
Well, no, but you saw Kyle McCord leave, and you're like, Will Howard, okay, it doesn't really seem like much of an upgrade. He showed through this playoff run why he was an upgrade on Kyle McCord.
Maybe not decisions.
Maybe not in arm talent, but yeah, between the ears and leadership.
Oh, and he was physical. He was willing to do it with his legs. His blue collar.
His willingness to lead from the front is kind of what I see. And then you even see the maturity in the post-game interview multiple different times through this playoff run, especially last night. You see, that's a guy that echoes what his head coach has to say. It kind of feels like that next coach on the field. I had my doubts about Will Howard at Ohio State this year, especially following that Michigan game. He wouldn't prove me wrong. I was looking last night. I'm like, is that a guy that's an NFL first-round pick? Likely no, but would it surprise me if he went and figured things out in the NFL and worked his way into a starting role? No, I wouldn't be surprised because I think he's got what it takes in between the years, and he's got that will to go out there and win. So that's another thing. You'd have to tip the cap. Like, obviously, everyone knew Quinshon Judkins was going to be great for you. Everyone knew Caleb Downs was going to be great for you. Those guys are the type of transfer portal, few and far between type guys where there's not many of them in the portal. Everyone knows they're going to be great. It's a race for their services. You went and did the dirty work and going and plucking Will Howard from Kansas State. That was not a guy that everyone around the country is like, man, I need that quarterback. Remember, he pretty much got forced out of Kansas State because they we like what we have in Avery Johnson.
Yeah, and Avery's the next best thing.
And Will Howard was kind of scrapped. So you do have to tip your cap. They went and got the most important position right, and they did it in a way that not everyone around the country would have necessarily did the same thing they did. So that's why I will tip my cap.
I'll say this too. You've got to have people can scream about it, but in that locker room, you saw 3 key pieces. Well, a lot of that receiver room. Receivers are divas, and I love them. But a lot of them are screaming if they don't get the ball. you've got 4 and 5 star dudes that are whatever it takes to win. That's their mentality. Winning was most important than stats and draft status. It's all going to take care of itself. You have unselfishness in your quarterback, clearly, right? Because he didn't care if he threw it 100 times or ran it or handed it off. He just wanted to win at that level. And then you had your running back duo. Junkins and Travion Henderson's been there 700 years, but he wanted to win. Now, they're 4 and 5 star guys, but it's a rare combo to get a 4 and 5 star that is unselfish, that gets that buy-in, and then performs, gets coached up at a really, really, really high level, but also from a maturity standpoint is there. That's the story of this football team.
And what's the difference between Ohio State and Nebraska, Schmidt, whenever you look at it? Putting talent to the side. Putting talent to the side. It's the fact that Ohio State has a McFlurry machine in the press box. Nebraska, take notes. That was fantastic.
It's the fact that Columbus has a Hyde Park with a 40-ounce porterhouse.
I'm still that McFlurry. I got myself a little sunrise smoothie, mango, and then an espresso chocolate ice cream McFlurry type thing. That was glorious. Take notes, Nebraska. I think that's what the big difference is.
Okay, so it was the food on the trip. It wasn't
100%.
It wasn't the fact that, hell, Nebraska's got a chance to go win this thing, that we all kind of looked at each other in the press box as Nebraska had their shot, right, to do win the eventual national champions. But is the only way to win a natty to go grab that abundance of talent? Well, the short answer is yes. But
yeah.
You need high level coaching. You need that combination of talent and coaching, and you need some of that character in a football team, that selflessness. You need guys who know, get, and are great at their roles, no matter how big or small they are. And Ohio State had that.
I mean, the only team I can think of in recent history that didn't do it with a boatload of 5 stars, they did it with a handful and a good number of 4 stars, was Michigan last season. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear. Michigan, we're not going to go revisionist history. Go back and look at the recruiting rankings. A lot of high 4 stars. Not that many 5 stars when you compare it to...
And they shifted.
As you go look down the list, but before Michigan, Georgia, twice, Bama, LSU, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State. I mean, these are teams that just had laundry lists of 5-star players on their team. That's what the past decade has been. Michigan's been the exception, and it's still one of the best schools around the country in terms of recruiting whenever they did go win that national championship. They may not have been top 5, but they were consistently top 12 every single year. That's what it is right now. Like, you can go make the playoff, and there are feel-good stories in the field this year. Arizona State and Boise State. You could even argue Notre Dame's a bit of a feel-good because their recruiting rankings are not top 5. But in order to go win it, it's the teams that just have the most blue-chip, high-ranking athletes on their team. It feels as simple as that right now.
In this new model of college football, it is. Now, there's the used car market, literally and figuratively, where you're able to get somebody from the portal. Can you resurrect or recreate their career at a different spot and have that be a difference maker for you as well? It depends on the driver, i.e. the coaching staff. So Ohio State was supposed to do this. They did do it, but don't discount the pressure on them to do it. Jeff Snitley is in as we give our starting 5 shout-outs, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. The other Dave is in. Arlo is here, Grateful Red, checking in from Colorado. Good to have you. Husker Red checking in from the Dominican. Husker Red, I wish we were on site with you because it's been a sub-zero day in Lincoln. So there you go. Brian Snitley, the other part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, is in. Love it. Which will happen first? A new special teams coordinator named or Nebraska basketball winning another game? Ooh, good question, Mr. Snitley. Mike in from Cali. Roddy checks in. Ronnie, I love it. Says, I hope no Miami prospects were in town this morning. There's all sorts of tricks, right?
To staying warm?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? There's not a whole bunch of tricks. There's one tried and true proven method: layers.
Well, layers. But I'm saying you can tell them. In
order to convince a Miami kid
we need to rebook your flight. Check out the news crews here for you, Mr. Frazier.
I feel like
it's Bill Dolman with a camcorder and empty tape.
Yeah, no, I feel like you just say, hey, look at all this gear we got you. We want you to wear it all at once. Yes, that is 6 layers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll never even feel the cold.
Tuck says, Mr. Snitley, I hope both happen. Nebraska wins a basketball game, and Nebraska gets a special teams coordinator before Christ's return. Tuck, well played. Anonymous is here. When Nebraska loses to Northern Illinois, we fire everybody. When Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois, they almost win a national championship. That is an indicator, right? Where is your program at? The Michigan-Ohio State game must not be as important as they say because Ryan Day still has a job. Game Dog checks in, cheer for old Notre Dame. Hey, they played their butt off with a little less talent, but let's not discount what Notre Dame brings to the table. They're pretty good. Nice of you to reference, Tuck, that I was driving Ryan Day's golf cart last night.
It's that time.
Psst. Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, ready to release the fury. Mitch Sherman with The Athletic, and find his great work on The Athletic and at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. The Locked On Nebraska podcast a must listen to as well. Mitch, how we doing? What'd you think of the championship game last night? Thanks for joining us.
I am doing well. Hope you are well. Staying warm. I thought that it lived up to the expectation. I just wanted to see a good game and wanted to see Ohio State maybe get challenged in a way that was different from what we've seen in the earlier rounds of the playoff. And despite not looking like that was going to happen at halftime or even into the third quarter, I was satisfied by the end. I thought that they were a worthy champ, and Notre Dame put up a good fight.
They did. And 3rd and 11, can you do anything else but throw it to Jeremiah Smith?
Well, I mean, they have so many options, and it's easy to look at it now and say they're going to go to their best player, and that seems to be the right thing to do when it produced 56 yards.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like a pretty good call, but they only needed 11. So it's not like it was 3rd and 28, and at that point, I think you'd definitely put a couple of defenders on him. There were other. I mean, Ohio State had running backs that could have been used out of the backfield. There were a variety of things that Notre Dame had to consider, and if you're not going, I guess the biggest issue I have is if you're not going to bring heavy pressure and make Will Howard throw it fast, then you probably have to have him bracketed in some way, Smith, down the field. I don't think you can do both of those things. Both go, zero pressure, mm-hmm. and then also put him in man-to-man coverage. I realize that Ohio State has a lot of options to account for, and that there are other receivers out there who could easily get 11 yards. But if someone's going to face double coverage in that situation, then it probably needs to be Smith.
Do you think, Mitch, we kind of hit on this back in the first segment. I want to get your thoughts on it. Does the pucker factor set in if Notre Dame's down by 6 instead of 8 in that moment with the missed field goal? We mentioned yesterday on the show, if Notre Dame was going to win, they would have to do it playing Big Ten football. Perfect on special teams, mm-hmm. dominant on the lines of scrimmage. They need a couple takeaways. I think they checked 2 of the 3, the one being special teams they didn't with that missed field goal late. Is there added mm-hmm. pucker factor? Do you still call that same play? Is it executed in the same way if Notre Dame's down by, say, just 6 instead of 8?
I think they probably would have. Yeah, I think Ohio State probably would have still called that play just because of how good Smith is and that he's the option that you need to look to. If you're going to go down, you're going to go down looking for Jeremiah Smith down the field to get a big gain. But I think I think the pucker factor set in. I mean, it was 31-7, and then the next thing you know, it's 31-23, and Notre Dame's, in a position where they're one play away from getting the ball back with a chance to tie it and send it to overtime. So I think some of the reason for that, and you can call it what you want. I mean, you see it all the time in sports. We've seen it happen in Nebraska countless times. I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens in basketball too. You get a big lead and you start to play different. And that's just Ohio State. There's a balance there. It's hard to do the things that you want to do to prevent mistakes and use some clock and be a little more conservative, but still play with the same kind of freedom and aggressiveness that got you that 24-point lead. So it's just a part of the way things go all the time in sports. And there was another good team on the other end of it, and Notre Dame took advantage. I mean, the turnover after the long pass play on the first play of the fourth quarter, I think after that, for the rest of the quarter until the final throw that with 2 minutes to go, I think Ohio State was feeling pressure, and it was showing.
And the difference and what sets you apart is five-star talent with Jeremiah Smith. And Mitch, that was our main theme in the first segment. Is that the only way forward to go win a national championship? Is it just an overwhelming amount of five-star blue-chip prospects?
It's a good way to do it. Yeah, I don't know if it's the only way. I'm rolling my mind through the teams that were in the playoff this year, and most of them, Oregon, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. Sure, they're all filled up with high-end talent. Notre Dame's probably the example, and Notre Dame has a ton of talent too, but it's probably the example of a team there that did it a little bit different and did it, kind of playing Big Ten style football. I mean, Michigan a year ago wasn't a 12-team playoff. Michigan didn't have to win 3 or 4 games to get to the top. So I think your question applies mostly to doing this in a 12-team playoff like Ohio State did. If you're going to win 4 games against top 10 teams in a month, yes, I think you've got to have incredible talent. Like, for all that the schools like Boise State and Arizona State and SMU did this season to get to the playoff and have great years and get through their conferences, I don't think there's any scenario where they do what Ohio State did just because of the difference in the talent on the Ohio State roster versus those others.
And Mitch, kind of as a follow-up to that, how close or far is Nebraska from a playoff in your eyes whenever you compare, like, national championship? I think they are so far away whenever you compare talent between Ohio State and Nebraska. But you look at like a Notre Dame or say even a Michigan last year, where Michigan did have good amount of high 4-star talent, maybe not the same high-end 5-star talent, and I know a 14 playoff's different. You can maybe see more of a comparison there with Nebraska's offseason move. Just want to get your thoughts on just how far away Nebraska is right now from being at the top.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we talk about this subject in Nebraska, I think if I'm listening in as an outsider, I say, why are you jumping over 5 steps here? They're Illinois is closer than Nebraska to making the playoff, or Minnesota is closer than Nebraska. Certainly Iowa has shown over recent years there are times where it would have been in a 12-team playoff, and it's closer than Nebraska right now to getting in it. But I think the answer is that all of those teams can make it at some point, because if Indiana can do it, then so can they. And hey, huge credit to Indiana for what it did this year. It pushed the right buttons, and it got the right transfers in the right places, and things kind of worked. I mean, when your quarterback's playing on a torn ACL all year, and he basically stays healthy minus a thumb injury, then that some things are working in your favor. The schedule worked in Indiana's favor. That's what you have to have happen. I think if you're one of these teams from the middle of the Big Ten that's going to rise up on a 1-year basis. Now, to do it consistently and to be an Oregon or a Penn State or Ohio State or Michigan, I mean, they're the top of the league right now, and certainly you could see USC getting into that category if they get their stuff together. They have the recruiting base and everything that's in place. Others could jump up there too, and Nebraska's kind of in that in that category. Of course, if it's if you're talking about a 12-team playoff or even a 14 or 16-team playoff some years down the road, like it's absolutely there. Like you can make it. There is not a Big Ten. If you can't make it, then what are you even doing in the Big Ten or the SEC? Like the door has to be attainable to get through that. Now I agree with you, Elijah. Getting to the top and winning 3 or 4 games, that's a different kind of challenge altogether, and that has become more difficult. It's easier to make it to the playoff, clearly, than it was a year ago. Much more difficult to win the championship.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. The Athletics, where you read Mitch, Locked On Nebraska podcast. We've got some folks in the stream, the real Brandon chiming in that the blue chip ratio for teams that win it, and I didn't ask him to cite his source, but it's a good number, 51%. Jim Walden used to say 5-year or 5-star, Mitch, right? That's your formula for winning. And you get the 5-star, you can be good quicker. You get the 5-year dude, you develop and build up to it. You get both going, and then maybe you're in the playoff a lot more often. Where do you lean in this new era? Do you try and go get a former 5-star or 4-star and hope that they fit in? Because, damn, Will Howard really was pretty selfless and was a great point guard amongst a bunch of 5-stars.
Funny, he was the lowest rated recruit on that offense.
No, I know, but I mean that was a key component, I thought, that Ohio State went to this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a similar. It's a different look, but a similar kind of philosophy for any team that strives to get to where Ohio State went this year. You're not going to have as many 5-stars running around on your team. Ohio State may not ever be in a place again where it has that kind of edge in talent over seemingly the rest of the country. But you have to have a combination of veterans and then big time talent. And I think where if you're building this in your Texas for next season, you can probably lean more toward the, hey, let's just stockpile talent and have more depth and have 5-stars that are coming off the bench and 4-stars who are, the number 3 at left tackle, and if they have to play, we're gonna be ready. If you're Texas or Ohio State or Michigan, you can probably lean a little more on that talent. And if you're anybody else, essentially, you've got to have experience and then just some luck on your side. So the formula for Nebraska, if it's to contend for a spot in the college football playoff, and we're not talking about getting to Monday night, but just to get there, it's going to have to do it with a combination. Like you're going to have to hit on the high level recruits that you are able to sign or attain out of the transfer portal, and then you're going to also have to have the players who are committed to your program and stick with it over a period of years and then are on somewhat equal footing just because of their knowledge and their understanding and their experience as someone else on the other side who might be more skilled or have a higher ranking as a recruit.
Mitch, about 30 seconds. Let's flip to Husker basketball and how nervous do you think Nebraska's fans are about tomorrow night? USC's coming in, but it's been a tough road the last 4.
Yeah, it looks like a team that's on the ropes a little bit or a lot. The last 2 losses haven't necessarily been the kind of losses where you walk away from it, despondent. Maybe you can be despondent after a close loss where you felt like you had a good shot to win it, more so than after a game like Purdue. I just mean that Nebraska played a style that got it closer to winning in both of those games. You're talking about a shot, basically, a couple of 3-point games. So that's tough. The big one still to me is that Iowa game and what happened in the last 15 minutes of that game. I think it set the table for what's happened since then. I don't know that Nebraska loses the next 3 if it finds a way to hang on or win in overtime against Iowa, but they've gone on a slide, and I think that they're lacking some confidence at the end of games because of what's happened in the last couple of weeks. Although that was a nice comeback when they were down and looked out against Maryland on the road on Saturday, Sunday morning. This is the danger zone for sure against USC at home, because it's a good enough USC team to come in and win. They did it against Illinois, which is probably a better team than Nebraska. Did that on the road in Champaign. Certainly, would look like a more difficult win for USC than playing at Nebraska when Nebraska's on a 4-game skid. So this is one that Nebraska really needs. I mean, I don't know that you've gone into a game this year, maybe Rutgers last week, and said Nebraska has to win this one. Like, it's a must. To me, it's a must win because of what's out there, what's happened over the last 4, and then what's coming down the road starting at Wisconsin this weekend.
Mitch, we'll see you next time. Thanks again for the time, man.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Big thanks to Mitch Sherman for checking in and talking some ball with us. I love the topic here of what it takes to win a natty. That abundance of talent, very real, and Nebraska's been acquiring talent. Can they get it shaped and molded, and can you contend? And Mitch was right on, man. If you're in the Big Ten or SEC, it is not for the meek nor for the weak. Speaking of, you have Paul Feinbaum. He's not meek or weak. He would squash me. Maybe not on the basketball court or in the weight room, but you know what I'm saying. Paul Feinbaum was asked, who is the Soapbox Derby King? What I mean by that is, who is your champ? Who is supreme in college football? Is it still the SEC?
As of this moment in time, Paul Feinbaum, does the Big Ten own college football?
The answer, Greeny, is yes. The Big Ten at the moment owns college football, and there's no way you can say it doesn't. When you go back to back, that's generational. In Ohio State's case, they beat 2 SEC schools along the way. And there's an old saying that was emanated in 1828 when Andrew Jackson was elected president. A senator from New York said, "To the victor belongs the spoils." And that's exactly where the Big Ten is this morning. It's an uncomfortable feeling for the SEC, which has owned the sport, but it's a reality this morning.
So there you go. You have a public proclamation. Hey, take it and run. 2 in a row. 2 in a row for the Big Ten.
Well, and look at Ohio State's. I mean, I'm not going to call it the most impressive resume.
I think you can. Because
the loss to Michigan, as well as going 1 for 2 against Oregon, spoils things. I think they have the most impressive wins.
How you closed? Wow.
There's a difference between having the most impressive resume and having the most impressive wins. I think Ohio State's got the most impressive wins. We got to talk about losses as well. In any other year, Ohio State wouldn't have even been in the national championship game.
Well, that's for sure.
And that's why I can't call it the most impressive resume, but I can say when you beat 6 of the top 8 teams at the end of the season, you got the most impressive wins in the country. You went 1 for 2 against one of them, but at least you got the win.
But and I just opened a bad can here of QB1A saying Schmitty v. Feinbaum, the undercard for Canelo v. Crawford. Make it happen. I will wheeze all over Feinbaum. You know that. Paul might buy ink by the barrel, but he's always the real Matthew. Gonna be not nice. There we go. Captain, his own proclamation. The Nebraska Cornhusker football team will make the college football playoff in 2025.
Well, the thing is Nebraska, we talk about that blue chip ratio.
And that is 51% of your roster's 4-star or better.
Do you know what Ohio State's was this year, their blue chip ratio, if you had to guess?
7 out of 10?
9 out of 10.
Jeez.
90%. Bama was at 88%. Georgia was at 80%. Oregon, 76%. There were only 4 teams that made the playoff this year that did not have a blue chip ratio of 51%.
But you did have.
I mean, even Notre Dame's at 67%.
Well, they should be, but Nebraska should be, don't you think? I mean, it's always been all right. Nebraska, they have gotten when it was the blue chip top 10 or the top 25 blue chip players, when it was just the blue chip publication that Switzer would swear by or Osborne would get, right? It has shifted to the stars, and Nebraska's always been in the top 4 or 5 recruiting. The last several, for sure the Frost era, they recruited well. And Bo's classes were kind of hovering around there in that 20 to 30 range.
But there's only 15 teams with a blue chip ratio of 51%.
But you need to be...
So to be in there, you got to be a top 15 recruiting class, realistically, and that's on a 4-year rolling average.
Here's what I think.
So across a 4-year rolling average, you got to average top 15 recruiting classes.
I think by the time you're done developing the kids, they've turned into top 15. That's the trick, is do they start out top 15? Do you start out 30th? I think the senior class that won TO's first title in '94, I think they were 30-ish or something like that.
But the problem is that, as I laid out, 4 teams: Boise State, Arizona State, Indiana, and who's the 4th team? Someone said it in the stream chat, so I do apologize. Were lower than that 51%, made that happen. You can make the college football playoff lower than a 51%, but the thing is what it allows you to do...
Are you counting your portal kids, what their stars were?
I believe, yes, in and out. It's just on your roster.
Okay.
But anyway, with the blue chip ratio, it cleans up your mistakes that happen on the recruiting trail. Whenever you have 90% of your guys in there, even if you miss on a 4 or a 5-star, it's okay. You got 3 more ready to come take their spot. Whenever you don't...
You got to have that culture, though, man.
But yeah, you can get guys coached up to play like those 4 and 5 stars, but whenever the other team has the luxury of striking out on a 4 and 5 star and you're still okay, that's what the difference is between the teams that actually have a chance to win it all and the teams that are just hoping to make a playoff.
No, are you a contender? Are you happy to be there, or do you want to make some noise? Right?
Yeah, and to add to it, with 12-team playoff, probably soon to be a 16-team playoff, the gauntlet you have to go through. What happens whenever your starter gets injured?
That's what's fascinating about Notre Dame last night is they're down to their 2nd and 3rd team O-linemen.
And a lot of those guys are still 4 and 5 stars.
But they stuck. They played. They stayed.
But it's different whenever your 4-star lineman is backed up by a 3-star, and then here's a walk-on. And can they be all right? Yes. Is your margin of error incredibly tiny, as Mitch said?
Oh, for sure. And that's when Nebraska was rolling and just making other people real. They had guys that were coming in scrub time that were future 2nd or 3rd round picks behind 1st round guys. I mean, you had it rolling. Coach Brandon says there are only 332 blue chip players every year. So, and I have not done my research on the blue chip. I mean, we look at recruiting, but now it's more portal focused. No, I mean, just go get guys, and there are misses. And what I mean by misses, there are guys that fall through the cracks that, for whatever reason, might be ranked as a 3-star, but damn, and they're in your program, if you get them right, They are 4 and 5 star. It's a fit thing as well. There's so much of this recipe.
But I think the reality of college football is you can't rely upon those guys that are either under-scouted for whatever reason or you've developed.
Not anymore.
You can't rely upon that.
Not anymore.
You're agreeing with me?
No, I am. I'm not anymore, because those guys aren't going to stick around anymore.
And also in the recruiting trail nowadays, with as covered as it is, guys don't slip through the cracks as much, where you get lucky with a 3-star and nobody else is looking at this guy because he was from whatever state. Look how many people come into Nebraska every year.
I think you've got a couple of guys for Nebraska that are from Florida that ended up high 3-stars. I'm not saying they slipped through the cracks, but they ended up in Nebraska as opposed to staying in Florida.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, winding down hour one. Michael Bruntz, Andy Markowski. Coming up next hour, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We go to Pete. Pete's checking in here with Hail Varsity Radio. Pete, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
How you doing today?
We're good, Pete. Just talking a little college football. What do you know?
Well, I guess my opinion is it's really going to be determined largely on who's got the biggest payroll in the future. If you look at the teams that are at the top, they've probably got the biggest payroll for the last 2 years. And if you've got big enough donors, I think you can come closer, if not buy a natty, which has totally changed. We talk about the transfer portal. Well, we let other universities do the training, and the best players, you just pay them more, and they come to your university. So I think a lot of it's going to boil down to who wants a natty and what's it worth, and do you have the donors to pay that?
Well, you've got a nice collective with 1890. They have been super competitive, so Nebraska has that. Nebraska has the equity of the fan base, and that's not taken for granted. Then folks will pony up, but they want to see a winner, right? You've been patient for a while. So Nebraska will be competitive, and they're in a good spot for that. Now, you don't have the money that SC does. You don't have the money that A&M does. You have Florida. You have some SEC programs. I mean, there's some folks that will flat out outbid you, but maybe you get the instance where you can't settle on a kid where it is solely just all about the money. It's got to matter a little bit. That's the reality you live in today. But do you like Nebraska, and do you like what Matt Rule's doing? That's the box that needs to get checked more so than the dollar amount. Easy for me to say, but that's who you want on the team, I think.
Well, I would agree, but I think if you look at Ohio State and Texas, I think they probably got the highest payroll as far as NIL money.
For sure.
They were paying quarterbacks to come out of high school $1 million to transfer the next year. I mean,
yeah, in Nebraska probably from an NIL standpoint is good and competitive to keep a guy from leaving like a Raiola, at least so far.
But can you keep 10 or 15 of those type of athletes here, or is somebody going to come in and outbid?
Well, you're gonna have to try and keep them, and maybe they want to stay, and they won't listen to the bids because they like playing like with a Raiola.
Well, and you know what helps people open up the pocketbooks?
Wins.
Yeah. Talk about Ohio State with their richest roster in college football. They're gonna probably have more money to work with next year because you've won a national championship.
And all they've done is go to the playoff about every other year anyway. Pete, thanks for the phone call, bud. Good stuff. We'll get to more of your comments in the stream. Shavers and Barney are two guys that were high 3 stars that there's no way, if I'm a coach in Florida, that I would have let them out. And that's just kudos to Nebraska.
But it's wild. Their connections. As I go back and look, like Ohio State, their 2023 recruiting class, which are the guys that are, you're winning games with now, not all of them, but they brought in 20 guys in that class. 19 of those 20 were blue chips. They brought in 1 3-star.
How many have left and how many started?
As you go look at the transfer portal guys, they brought in 5 guys out of 9 in that class that were former 3-stars. Okay. So they hit it there a little bit, and the guys also hit the road, but wild. 19 out of 20 were blue chips.
Well, back in the day, that inexact science, you hit 50%, you're gold. Then the walk-ons were your eraser. Michael Bruntz on the way.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's hour 2 at Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Michael Bruntz with us. Husker 24/7 Sports, the 247 Sports Network. And find Bruntzy on Twitter at Michael Bruntz. Well, on to winter conditioning, Bruntzy. The natty was settled last night. What'd you think?
Yeah, it ended up being a little bit of a better game than it was trending towards, so I'll take that. But yeah, I don't know. I think by if they continue on the path that they're on with the playoff, I mean, I think you're going to feel pretty good about whoever the champion ends up being, just because of the gauntlet they're going to have to run to get there. So I don't know about you guys. I liked kind of the first version of the college football playoff. I'm eager to see if they can fix the seeding stuff, but all in all, I mean, I think it looked pretty good for me, being kind of a dorky fan that likes a lot of. I like some random teams. I don't like it so chalky. So give me Arizona State, give me Boise State, whoever every year.
What does it mean to you? I mean, we had those good stories, Bruntz, with SMU and with Arizona State and with Boise State. But what does it mean to you that at the end of the college football playoff, it's the most expensive roster in America, the one with the most five-star talent that's lifting the trophy?
Yeah, I mean, I like Cinderella being at the ball, but I mean, I guess maybe she doesn't need to win it. I don't know. I mean, I guess, is it a situation where everything kind of found its level? I mean, is that the cliche that we get to? I guess, at least having a couple northern teams in it, that to me felt significant. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. I mean, it's wild. I mean, when you think back a month to what the discussion was, or a little bit over a month, to the discussion around Ryan Day, and to kind of see it end the way it did. I mean, it's funny how things flip that way.
Michael Bruntz with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Husker 24/7 Sports, at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. So, talk to me about your thoughts with where you see Nebraska's position in this now upcoming second season with a college football playoff, 12 teams. And you look at Ohio State's talent acquisition and level and investment. What's that mean for Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can kind of, I mean, you had a 2-loss team win it. I think, or at least there. I mean, I think what it shows you, though, is that there's a little bit more parity, I guess, in college football. I mean, I think to be one of the teams that kind of sneaks in there, I mean, you don't have to be perfect. I mean, you just want a shot at it. And, Nebraska obviously is a flawed program and has been for a while with, some of the losses they've had and how close they've been in certain spots. But, you're going to have to invest. I think Nebraska's done that. I mean, they've put the money towards the facilities. I think, they've got a quarterback that, would definitely be the guy on a lot of rosters around college football. It's just a matter of kind of how you put what you put around him. And I think you do have to at least acknowledge too that. It's not like Nebraska's just sitting there twiddling its thumbs. I mean, you're going to have 3 brand new coordinators in year 3. They're doing everything they can over there to get over the hump. So, for Nebraska, it's how do you get those 7 wins? How do you turn that into 9 or 10? I mean, that's kind of the next step for this program. And, I mean, it feels like every year it goes back to the close games thing. But, I mean, legitimately, you win 3 of those, it's a much different season. And that's the challenge for Nebraska, though, is how do you make that next step to get to where you're very, very much in that conversation rather than just kind of being an also-ran.
Well, when you look at the playoff field, how comparable or close do you think Nebraska would be on the field against an SMU or a Clemson at this point? Or, well, we know what Indiana did to Nebraska, or Notre Dame. I mean, what's the gap in your eyes right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a significant talent gap between Nebraska and Indiana. I don't think there's much of a talent gap between Nebraska and SMU. I mean, that SMU team, you know, at the start of the season, I watched them struggle on the road against Nevada. Like, you know, I don't think that they're that far off. It's just how do you kind of find the ways to do the little things to get you over the top. I mean, how do you do the basics of special teams to where it doesn't hurt you? How do you find some more explosiveness in your offense, a few more points here or there? You know, how do you maintain a top 25 defense? I mean, you know, Nebraska had a defense, at least statistically, the last couple of years that, you know, should have very strongly put them in the running for, you know, that conversation later in the year. So that's kind of where you're at right now as a program, is going through it fine tooth and kind of trying to, you know, find ways to maximize your advantages. And I think part of that, and kind of going back to Elijah's question, which I think is a good one. I mean, it's like, you know, the team that spent a lot of money ended up winning. I mean, that's true. And I think, you know, Nebraska's embraced the transfer portal a little bit more. I think they're doing it in the right ways too. I mean, I think you have to, there's certain positions where you have to swing big and you have to spend some money. And I think Nebraska's doing that at the right spots. But, you know, we'll see if that can kind of translate to Saturdays when it really matters. And that's been the biggest problem for Nebraska, is just kind of staying out of its own way when it comes to making that next step.
From what you saw last year, Bruntz, as we kind of get into the winter conditioning part of the year, Huskers starting up mat drills, physically, was Nebraska on par with their opposition last year from what you saw? Is the strength and conditioning side of things done their job when you ask what Nebraska still needs in order to make that next step?
I think so. I mean, I think kind of going back through mentally that, you know, this year, I mean, I don't think there were, like, because, you know, I think it shows up a lot in the lines, right? Like, that's usually where you see it first, is like, is this team stronger, bigger, faster, or whatever up front? And, I mean, even that Ohio State game, I mean, you go back and watch that game, I didn't think that Nebraska was outclassed at all by Ohio State that day in Columbus. I mean, if anything, I thought Nebraska's defensive line really gave Ohio State a lot of problems. You know, I think they'd closed the gap to, you know, what Iowa is. I mean, that was, you know, Mark Banker's bloodbath comments withstanding. And I think, you know, that's been a group that always kind of seemed to have Nebraska's number up front. I didn't think that was the case this year. It wasn't last year. So I think they're on the right track there. I mean, you know, they're, I think, approaching things the right way over there in terms of, you know, how they're doing things. I mean, the amount of money that they're spending just to feed players over there. And I think that all is okay to me. You know, I don't think that's really the problem.
Bruntz, going to go to hoops. How big is tomorrow night for Fred and Nebraska basketball when we look at this season and the wrong kind of streak they're on?
Yeah, it's huge. You know, the kind of one thing that you could say for Nebraska basketball is they could always defend home court. And, you know, in the Big Ten, you have to win at home and hope you can get a couple on the road. And, you know, Nebraska's down one right now after dropping that game to Rutgers. So, you know, they really need to kind of dial it in. They've got to figure out the three-point defense and find ways to just get a little bit more consistent offense. I mean, that to me is, you know, as bad as the defense has been at times this year, just, you know, for this team, it feels like it's just been really hard to score points sometimes. And, you know, mentally, you know, you start hearing about, you hear things when you're out and about, you know, the way things are going in the direction of things. And, you know, they've got to find a way somehow to kind of get back on the right side. So it's a big one. I mean, I thought that Rutgers game was kind of a must win, and this is kind of, you know, 2 or 3 times that right now.
Bruntz, we asked the question yesterday on the show, like, for Husker fans, at what point do you start looking for the exit ramp on this season? Have you already started looking for the exit ramp and turning your attention to a top 25 Husker baseball and Husker softball team? Is that an overreaction based on the recent schedule? I mean, you look at what's coming up in February, the games get more manageable, especially into March as well. Are we overreacting based on really the toughest part of Nebraska's schedule, or is that reality right now that, you know what, it might be time to start looking for the exit ramp on this season?
Yeah, it's probably a little early. I mean, it was going to be a tough stretch regardless. And you would have hoped that Nebraska probably would have gotten one or two of those. But, I mean, this is it's a veteran team. We'll see if they can find whatever it is that they need to kind of get things turned around. And, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you got baseball still a month away. I know they're starting practice on Friday, but there's a little bit of time left before you're watching baseball and things like that. So it's probably worth sticking it out with this team for a few more weeks at least until you really start getting some games to worry about. That's my very glass half full view on things, I guess.
As you look at Nebraska basketball, if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, the hope is what? Do you look at this roster and say, okay, Captain Morgan is playing pretty good basketball recently. You got a Sejan that's kind of snapped out of his funk. You got Bryce that can turn it on. Maybe Gary gets better around the rim because the guy's heart is there. Do you see enough pieces to pull up out of this tailspin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a team, I think, at the start of the season that had a pretty good recipe for the most part. I think they kind of need to find some of that toughness too. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you look at the way that they were playing to start the year, and I know the quality of opponent was different, but I mean, just defensively, it just looks like a completely different group right now. You do need your guys that are, your dudes to start kind of carrying their weight a little bit more. I know Gary's heart's in the right place, but he needs to score better. I mean, that's really the where things are right now. So I think they can figure it out. I mean, this is a team that's won. That they're not. It's not like you're trying to do it for the first time. So just a little more leadership, a little bit more toughness, and I think Fred kind of needs to find the right buttons to push. And I think that's kind of the challenge sometimes whenever you're constantly having to remake your roster. I mean, that's just the nature of college basketball now. But you kind of, when things start going bad or, you're going through a streak like this, you really kind of have to know your guys and know which buttons you can push to kind of get the most out of them. And we'll see if Fred has that.
Bruntz, before we get you out of here, I do need to ask, have you picked a bandwagon team for the remainder of the NFL postseason? Are you doing that? Are you watching for enjoyment? What's your take on championship weekend and the Super Bowl?
Well, it's not the Chiefs. I know that.
That's a pretty common answer right now.
I've only got three options, so I don't really have a strong secondary rooting interest right now. I hope that the games are good. That's really all I want is a couple of good games. Give me a really tightly contested Super Bowl. That's really all I'm hoping for right now.
Your John Elway starting lineup figurine is doused in gasoline, and someone's going to drop a match unless you pick. You got to choose one, Philly or Kansas City.
Oh, I'll take Philly in that situation easy. Philly twice on Sunday to save that John Elway. That's what I'm doing.
No, I get you. Michael Bruntz with us, Husker 24/7 Sports, at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Bruntzy, we'll see you later on. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks. Love Bruntzy. I can see that starting lineup, John Elway figurine on his wall.
What do you expect a Broncos fan to say?
My buddy, pharmacist Jeff, you've met him?
Yeah.
He's got a signed mini Stanford helmet from John when he would go up to training camp.
Well, I have the signed jersey in my basement. You've seen that, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
I have not. I've never been to your basement.
It used to be in the background of before I flipped up to a new location for my at-home podcasting.
Ah. Yeah. The Shrine of Elway. There are many of you.
Signed Elway jersey. Shout out to the housing family.
What did you do? White or orange?
Orange.
Like throwback orange?
This was a gift.
Oh. So you're not picky?
No, it's funny. A buddy of mine, his parents won it in a silent auction, but they didn't mean to win it in a silent auction. So just kind of sitting in storage.
Someone had a few too many Johnny Walker Blues and said, I'm going to put my name here.
I didn't ask the story. They were moving into a new house. They look at the Elway jerseys and they asked their son, hey, off of college, you know any big Broncos fans? And I was the selection. So I got a free signed Elway jersey.
This doesn't go in the basement. It doesn't go in the game room. We need to get rid of this signed Elway jersey. Get out to see the Supernovas, Nova Nation. You pack the CHI with the two biggest crowds in U.S. pro volleyball history this season. Keep it going. Your Omaha Supernovas face the Columbus Fury Friday, January 31st. Get your tickets today and log on this game and all season long with the Omaha Supernovas, supernovas.com. We'll talk a little hoopage. Andy Markowski with us on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity. We say hello to the pride of Ord, Andy Markowski with his Husker basketball standout, assistant over at Pius, and of course, all things Big Red Hoops. Andy, how we doing, man? Thanks for the time.
No, doing well and trying to stay warm here, but fortunately been spending every night in the gym, so it kind of takes care of the weather.
You are in the midst of a road trip. How did you manage the road trips as a player? Was it Walkman? Was it cards? Was it just rest? Was it school?
It was a little bit of everything. It was a lot of music and a little bit of cards and dice. Certainly, as college competitors, we found a way to add a little juice into most of the games, but also found some time to sleep and try to do a little homework. But that was probably the least most important thing on that list, right? You had to get your per diem at risk to see if you could double it up on most road trips.
See, in my day, just high school football, my friends who played basketball, you're talking guys are pulling up Kyrie Irving highlights if you're a point guard. You're pulling up the Tim Duncan highlights if you're a power forward, if you're a quarterback. Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray, whoever you like. What's your take on that? Do you focus on the game during the road trip, or is it better to get away?
Well, the coaches make you focus on the game. So, if you've ever seen a college itinerary, they don't give you a lot of time. Once you get to the hotel, you tend to have a meal followed by some film. In the morning, they'll get you up with either a film session or a walkthrough, depending on what time you play. So there's certainly they make you focus on the game, and then usually that in between time becomes time to spend with your teammates, and certainly the travel, the bus or the plane rides. You had a chance to to do whatever you felt pass the time the fastest, but most colleges are making you use your time to focus on the game. A couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon. So you could not get out of that.
You can find Andy Markowski on Twitter at Markowski_Andy. Who was the best dice player, and who got creative at cards? Can you call out any teammates?
Well, I got the most creative, Chris. I learned early on that the dice probably wasn't my strength, but I started being the house for blackjack, which I learned early on the house had the advantage. So if I could withstand a few runs, I ended up being on the right side of most road trips. And I think my junior year we played at San Fran. We went to Hawaii and played in the Rainbow Classic, and then we flew back and played Colorado to Open League. So it was like an 11-game road trip. So I came back and outfitted my apartment with some new couches and a desk. I did pretty good on that road trip. But so being the house was what I learned early on was probably the best side of gambling.
There's a reason the casinos in Vegas are so big, right?
Eddie Markowski was handing out markers in the back of the plane. And that was the team to do it, man.
Yeah, that we had some characters. Certainly the road trips were fun, and we had our alumni deal. I regress a little bit, but Kip Pavelka was part of it, and Ken had celebrated 50 years, so we just started telling stories. And in 95, 96, Kent was actually our our radio guy. So he was involved in a few of the card games too. So this is the second time I've told some card stories in the last month from some of the fun '90s things. So brings back a lot of fun, a lot of great memories.
I love it, Andy. Let's talk about tomorrow night, Huskers and SC. What's your reaction to Nebraska's skid here?
Well, it's just a hard league, I felt like our margin was small. Bryce, I knew just consistently it was going to be hard for him to keep scoring 20 to 30 points with the coaching and the players in this league. I was a little nervous that we didn't have a true number 2 scorer. Gary had kind of been that guy, but consistently through this stretch he hasn't, maybe he's been as productive offensively, and then there's, been a little bit of an issue being a consistent third scoring option. Where last year I just felt like, Mast and Casey and Williams, you just kind of, baskets came easier. But when you lose a game at Iowa that you had won, you come home and you don't, you don't finish against a good Rutgers team, and then you have the ball with a chance to maybe tie or win the game at Maryland. All of a sudden you can start looking at 3, 4, 5 losses in a row. So this is a huge game, especially if you look at who they have to follow USC. Certainly the front 10. If you divide the conference up in a first 10 and a back 10 games, their front 10 is really hard. I think 9 out of their 10 back games are winnable games. So I think the schedule gets easier for them, but that they're not feeling that right now. I mean, this is a must-win game against a USC team that appears to be playing better.
Andy Markowski with us here talking some Husker basketball. And Andy, as you look at the big man rotation, it's kind of been all over the place. Mia's playing time is, sometimes 20-plus minutes a game. You look at Sunday, it was less than 5 minutes. Andrew Morgan really stepped up in his absence. What do you make of Nebraska's rotation in the front court, how they're handling that? Do you think Nebraska even knows who their best big man is, or is it all based on just style and matchup as it stands right now?
Yeah, I think, all three are different. There's games that Mia, needs to play with his size and physicality and rim protection. And then there's other games that maybe don't require that much defensive, rim protection and needs more scoring. And that's where maybe Morgan has really consistently, had a nice little 3 or 4 game stretch here. And, I think for Nebraska to stay competitive in the league, they need to have scoring at the 5, and Morgan has given them that. I think his point average is up 3 points in league play, which is atypical. You normally, from non-con to league play, you see everybody back up about 10 to 12% on a lot of their stats, scoring, rebounding, et cetera, just with the league being better scouted and obviously better competition. So I think that's a positive. Bear K at times shows some flashes, but I think his consistency needs to improve, and I think if that does, this team will improve and find more wins. But I think they're handling their front court like I thought they would. All players are different. All players have some really positive assets and skills, and they all have some warts that I think they're trying to hide and protect in certain games. But they certainly need to get more consistency out of that 5 spot. But more importantly, they need to find a consistent 2 scorer right now. I think that's been the major reason they just haven't been able to find enough points to win some of these close games.
Andy, what was your reaction to some of Fred's comments? I thought I saw a tougher team against Maryland, but that was a focal point just a little over a week ago with the Rutgers home loss. That's a button you push and or a pin you pull, and I'm glad Fred did it. He got a response. It's dicey though, isn't it? Knowing when to bring it up, and he wasn't wrong, because Nebraska really kind of frankly got out toughed by Rutgers, and we know how tough the Big Ten is.
Yeah, I've always been taught, and part of the analogy, if this offends anybody, but you have 6 bullets in your gun as a head coach, right? And if you fire more than that, you tend to lose your team, and they tune you out. So if you go to the St. Mary's game, I felt like Fred thought maybe the physicality wasn't where it needed to be. They came back, went to work, won at Creighton. Michigan State certainly got exposed, right? Came back, I feel like they responded from that. And then, to your point, I felt like they went on the road Rutgers at home, left some things out there, and then the Maryland game kind of got away from them, but they showed some grit and toughness to get back into that. So to your point, I think coaches have to have a great feel for their team and what is the right message at the right time. Sometimes, you have to build your kids up after a loss, if you feel like they're in a tough spot. And, Fred's paid a lot of money to make those hard decisions on what's the right message. But, you certainly can't come after them all the time, or I feel like they'll tune you out. And then that's when you see teams that just, tank at the end of the year as, coaches tend to lose the locker room and guys mentally check out. I don't think that's the situation with this group. They're old, they're mature, they're veterans, and, hopefully Fred can push the right buttons for them to win a really important, game at home against USC.
Andy, before we get you out of here, let's flip it over to the women's side of things where injuries have plagued this team, but they're still playing their best basketball. 5 straight victories. They crushed Wisconsin last night. Just want to get your thoughts on how that team is able to manage all the injuries they're dealing with this season and what you think that stretch run coming up here in February is going to look like.
Yeah, certainly losing, freshman of the year, Potts early, I thought affected them. And now you look at a player like Petrie that, has really stepped up the last 3 or 4 games. I think her confidence is up. And then, the Widener injury certainly, I just feel awful for Allison to go through what she's experienced. But, you also, you're kind of sharing point guards with Hake. Widener, and then Britt Prince as a freshman, I think was trying to figure out what's that blend, how much can I push, what do I need to do to try to separate myself. And I think since the Widener injury, I think Britt as a freshman has realized, like, listen, this is on me. I've got to do more. I'm being asked to do more. Her confidence is up. Her aggressiveness is up. So I think those injuries have created opportunities that other players have really stepped in and played well, and they're playing confident. And it's hard to say you weren't playing your best basketball against USC and UCLA because those teams can make you look pretty average. But I do think that the team has progressed since the Christmas break, and certainly last night, Wisconsin just played Ohio State to 10 the other night. They'd played some good teams in the league tight, and Nebraska really handled them. So, I hope that, means we're going to consistently, play well. But Sunday is a huge game against the top 10 team in Ohio State, and, hopefully the fans come out and watch, which, I think is a really fun group, and having a daughter on it, watching their 4-year run. I hope the place is sold out with passionate fans, and Ohio State would be a huge win on Sunday.
Andy Markowski with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Andy, what's it mean? It's a record. It's another milestone, but Alexis, number 3 now all-time in career rebounds.
Yeah, it's just awesome to watch and, have great teammates and support her. And, I think if anything, Alexis has just been a rock. She's not missed a game. A rebounding record, a double-double record, I think just speaks to, just the physicality and toughness and consistency and grit and just things that I think she's brought to the program. So, it's been fun to watch her, climb the charts. And, I think she'll, after Sunday, will be number 2. And, but once again, has, had a chance to play a lot of games, a lot of minutes with a lot of great teammates. And, she certainly, understands that. But certainly as a father, it's, been a remarkable career, and excited to see how it finishes.
Eddie, appreciate you. We'll check in again. Thanks for the time.
No, appreciate you guys. Take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. You really went here with Elway being number 2 behind Bo Nix.
That is so far out of context.
Okay.
I was asked, where does Elway rank on my all-time list? And you know what? I didn't feel like...
You didn't want to say Elway's got to be number... You weren't alive.
It's just like, man...
That's fine.
Could I go spend my time while I'm doing the radio show giving you my definitive all-time list of quarterbacking play? Sure. Is that a valuable way to spend my time on a Tuesday afternoon while we're in the middle of interviews with both Andy Markowski and Michael Bruntz? No, probably not. So therefore, John Elway number 2, Bo Nix number 1. That's the definitive quarterback rankings.
Somebody brought back some goodies from Lodo. You got the Elway magic.
No, Elway's only number 2.
Because you've had 7 handfuls of number 1. All right.
Don't
Kevin emails in chris@hailvarsity.com. We should just, some after hours average Joe pod, we should just start cracking beers or start hammering whiskey and just get into flat out Denver dialogue. Like just arguments. Just throw hand grenades and I give you hell about Denver, you battle back. Now, you probably could be an attorney, so you may smush me on the old argument thing. But
oh, no, so you go Broncos. I'll turn around and I'll just go personal.
Fine.
That's how I'll win that argument.
There's a lot of things you get personal about. You don't think I've heard them already?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Lots. Right.
Welcome to working in radio.
Yeah. It's all right. So,
or welcome to having a spouse.
She kind of makes me laugh when she insults me.
Well, that's nice. That's kind of heartwarming.
Yeah. The best thing to do to get back at her, though, is when you have 3 big dogs, your 3 big dogs can have a voice like Triumph, the insult comic dog. Remember that used to make an appearance on The Tonight Show?
I've seen clips. I do not remember.
Okay, well, anyhow, sometimes Gertie or Mr. Snuggles, they answer truthfully if that shirt's too small or not. The yoga pants screaming.
No comment.
All right, Kevin emails in chris@hailvarsity.com. This may be the last email I ever read. Okay, is it possible to be a successful developmental program in the portal era? You kind of got to be in that gray area of it. Well, you can't always keep going, I'm going to go grab my starting 5 offensive linemen from the portal. Can you? Unless you take a Marshall approach to Southern Miss and take the whole bleeping team. Well, but that's a fair question, Kevin. You've got to be able to develop. You got to have guys. There's very few. We talk about 4 and 5 stars, right? Look at Winery. He is the next Thibodeau, right? Coming out of high school, 5-star. Missouri keeps him at home, and with all of the upside and talent and physical gifts he has to come in and contribute. It didn't go that well from a contribution standpoint because you're just not ready.
And I love the Thibodeau comp. Is he Thibodeau? No,
but
could he be?
That's what you build up to be
if with proper development.
With some development, so you've got to. Kevin, I think the topic is how long is your lab, right? How long is your development time? Is it by game 6, is this dude ready to rock? By game 10, is this guy ready to rock? Is he raising hell by the bowl game? Or is it redshirt him? What's his redshirt freshman year look like by game 6 or game 4? That's what we're talking about from development. And because your lines of scrimmage take time. You know that better than anybody.
Yeah, and does it eliminate development? No. Does it change it? Probably a little bit.
It's a change. How are you with the change?
Well, because right now, what guys have to show is within 12 months of stepping foot on campus, assuming they're early enrollees, within 12 months of stepping foot on campus, by the end of their first season, by the time bowl season rolls around, you need to have showed the coaching staff, I am worthy of your investment over the next 2 to 3 years.
Why should I get to stay?
Yes, 100%. And that's what has majorly changed. And if there's guys that within that first 12-month period have not shown the coaching staff why they deserve a spot in that roster, you clean up mistakes through the portal. And as you said, some of the guys like Winery are development prospects where they have a high upside, but they need to be developed to get there. Other guys are like Dane Key, where I look at Dane Key, and right now, if Dane Key were to go into the draft, he's a pick. He's a draft pick. He comes back from he wants to raise his ceiling. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at some of the draft big boards for next year, he's a top 15 wide receiver. Plenty of time for that to change, whether it rises or falls, but that's where he's at right now. You bring in guys like that to be the absolute stopgaps, like, critical failure in the wide receiver room. The development hasn't been where we want it. We need an instant influx of talent. You bring in guys like that. But then in other spots, it's, you know what? we need a guy that we can develop for a couple years. We like what we have. We need some new development pieces behind. Or, you know what, maybe a guy just developed properly in your program and decided, I want to go play somewhere else, somewhere that I don't have to sit. And that's a reality as well, where your development just has gone into somebody that's never going to play for you, and that sucks. But that is what the new development is, and you have to go pick it up a portal guy to replace that development that you've already lost.
Brent chiming in. Brent, thank you. He believes I would destroy you with alcohol intake.
Pre-diet, maybe you would have.
I'm pretty weak now.
Well, yeah, now I just have 30, 35 pounds on you, which is a factor.
Yeah.
Having a little bit of size to you really helps. Didn't mean it like that.
Oh, sweet Lord. Justin chimes in. Elijah, he has a kid and a wife. You can't say anything to hurt him. That's fair.
That is true.
This goes back to the argument. I concede that your skills of argument and debate are pretty good. Your wheels turn a lot better than mine do. So, yeah. But on the topic of Nebraska, right, we talk about retention and that development portion. You have a coaching staff and a head coach, thankfully, that is not going to – you can adapt and adjust, but you can never shortcut. Okay, you just can't. You can't play guys before they're ready. They've got to hit a certain standard to be ready. Then they got to show that you can trust them in the game. I mean, it's every coach will tell you that, and I'm not a coach. I'm not smart enough to be one, but that's just the yellow brick road you got to go down. What's good about Nebraska theoretically is that they're in position to not worry about having to be an underdog. Are they going to be underdogs to Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State and Michigan? Probably more times than not. But Nebraska has the ability to do something about not being an underdog. They have the resources. They have the investment financially to go win ball games. And whether it's through development or portal acquisition, both need to be hitting on an 8 out of 10 accuracy. And then things will take care of themselves. You make that jump from 7 to 9 or better, maybe you're talking about playoff pushes in November.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, get the podcast, like and subscribe to Hail Varsity Radio. Search it, Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Tell us what you think, good, bad, or ugly. We appreciate the reviews. Also hit the like button. And check us out, Hail Varsity YouTube. Follow Twitter at HVarsity Radio, at Herbalescence, at Schmidt_radio. Reminder to buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. Prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. I think it is time to go to the gym tonight. Been treadmilling it, which is good. I haven't lifted in a while.
That'll be good. I'm going to be back in the lab tonight.
Oh yeah, I might just treadmill it with the old ruck vest, and maybe try an inch towards 3 miles.
Do it outside. The weather's warming up a little bit.
No,
it's not, because once you get the heart rate up when you're outside, it doesn't even feel cold.
Every morning that we deal with, and there's lots of folks that tune in on the stream or stream us that like have to work outside, that are ranchers or have livestock to deal with. So, dude, I should just not even go here. But it makes me think about living. And as much as I love it, I've grown up here. But mornings like this morning, where I'm bundled up, you make fun of me for giving gas station attendants heart attacks because of how I bundle up. I can't do this half the time. Like, why do we live here? We live here because we love it. But when we have these stretches of, well, you go outside for 3 seconds, your skin's going to get frostbite.
You know why we live here.
You're like Tom Coughlin against Green Bay.
Well, let's
you
look
better get a hammer and a chisel to save that bad boy.
Let's look on the bright side here. Why do you live here? It's because you'll never find any better people than the people found within the borders of the state of Nebraska.
That's absolutely it.
That's why you live here.
Totally.
Yeah, the weather sucks sometimes, though. Between January, February, and July and August, yeah, no. Those months don't do it for me. Extreme hot and extreme cold.
Says the two that, it could be 58 next week as we're looking for a golf ball.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll be back in the lab tonight, so bowling alley for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, getting that work in.
Are you going to fire up the light beer? Because you got to have a beer when you bowl.
I don't
it's your Amen juice.
I don't think it's any beer. I went no beer last week and had a solid night. Might be 0 beer again tonight for me.
Captain, I love this, says, Amen, Elijah.
People in Nebraska.
And Red Wine 65, the weather screens folks well. That's awesome. That is awesome. So bowling, are you playing a real team tonight, or is it another bye?
I assume we're not going to have a back-to-back bye, so I assume we're playing somebody else. Got to check the old email and see who we're taking on tonight. But no, I'm just going to go out there and dominate. That's what I do. Does their bowling team have an email or website? We could sick some of our listeners and streamers on them. Let's not do that. I like most of the people in my bowling league. That's all good. Let's see. Lane assignments. We got 30 seconds here. QB1 Ace. You live where you live because of familiarity or a woman. Ding, ding, ding. Love it. I know who we're bowling against here. Who? It'd be a free shout out to another business, so I'm not going to do that. Are they a business that you too could advertise? Yeah. I'll talk to them at bowling tonight and be like, hey, if you want me to mention your business on the air next time. Pay me. Yeah. Right to bleeping now. All right, back at 4 tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity YouTube.